This is the tutorial for Chapter 5, Section 7, and it's in Similarity and Congruence transformations. And so what we're going to end up taking a look at is we're going to be given an original figure, and they'll give us some ordered pairs, and an image. They'll give us some ordered pairs. And one way we could end up doing this is just graph the image and graph the original image and see what it ends up looking like. And the other way is actually by looking at the ordered pairs and comparing them. So if you can't compare from these ordered pairs, best thing to do is to go ahead and graph it. Now on the page that you're going to be assigned, they're not going to have graph paper, so you're going to end up having to use your own and just plot the points. So that's what I'm going to do to start with. And so -5 to 6. So I'm going to go over 5 spaces, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to the left, and up 6 spaces. It's going to put me there, and that's going to be A. And then I'm going to go 3 spaces over, 1, 2, 3, and then up 6. That's going to be B. And then I'm going to go 3 spaces to the left, and then just up 2 spaces. That's going to be C. And so what I'm going to end up seeing is when I go ahead and plot the next few points, I'm going to get an image that's similar to this, or possibly congruent. We'll see. So let's go ahead and replot these other points, 5 over 5 spaces, and then up 6 spaces. That is A prime. And then B prime is over 3 spaces to the left. And let's see here, that should be actually to the right. So let's make this a +3 here. And so over 3 spaces to the right, and this one should have been a negative here. And so that way we've got these matching right. So 3 spaces over, and then up 6 spaces. That's going to be B prime. So again, this was a negative here, and this was positive. And then over, we've got 3 spaces to the right, and up 2 spaces. And that's going to be C prime. So what we see right away is that when we graph it, it's easier to tell what actually ended up happening, what kind of transformation occurred. And the type is a reflection. It's a reflection right across the y-axis. So we can say ABC was reflected across the y-axis. Now, we could also come up with a rule, and the rule would be this. If we went ahead and wrote down the original values, x, y, we can see that it goes to this. The x values change sign. So here it was negative, and now they're all positive. So the x values are going to change sign. The y values are all the same. So notice how you're up the same number of spaces for points C, A, and B. So the y value stays the same. Now, if you're really good at this and have done a bunch of these, you'll end up seeing that just by looking at the ordered pairs. So notice how the x value is what changes here, -5 to +5. The y value stayed the same. So as soon as you see that, if you're familiar with this, you could end up saying, oh yeah, it's a reflection across the y-axis because I see the x values switch signs and the y values stay the same. And you'll see that for each of those. So that would be our answer right down below here. And we'll take a look at the next one. Again, if you're unfamiliar with it, I just graph them. So 4, -2. So over 4 spaces. So 4 spaces to the right, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then down 2 spaces. Puts me right there. And then that is A. And then I've got B is 7, -1. So 7 spaces, there's 6. 7 is going to be off a little bit. And then -1 will be right there, so that's B. And then 4, 7, 4 over, and then 7 down. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I go 7 spaces down, so I know that's just 1 down from there. So that's point C. And so from this point, what I can end up doing is drawing some lines between them, get a feel for what the figure looks like. So it's a triangle again. And we're going to go ahead and plot the next one. And so I'll just plot that in a different color here. And it goes 1, 1. So over 1 space, down 1 space, and that is A prime. And then 4, 2. So over 1, 2, 3, 4, and then down 2. So 1, 2, 3, 4, down 2. So it goes right there. So it's the same point. Actually, let's see, up 2 spaces. Let me fix that real quick. So that would have been down 2. So we'll go fix that other one as well. So let's go ahead and fix them all that I just did there. So let's Start with this first one again. 1, 1. So 1, 1 would be right there. It's A prime. And then 4, 2 over 4 spaces and then up 2. It's B prime. And then over 1 space to the right and then down 4 spaces. So it's 3 and 4. So that's going to be C prime. Then we go ahead and draw the lines. So right away I don't see, it's definitely not a reflection because it didn't flip over. It didn't rotate, so it didn't turn, so it's not a rotation, but what it did do is it moved. So the way we can figure out what it moved by is taking a look at one of the points. I'm going to take a look at A. It seems like the easier one here. So I'm going to go from here and see how many spaces it went over. So it went 1, 2, 3 left. So it went left 3 spaces. And then it went up 1, 2, 3 spaces. So up 3 spaces. So that's the rule. That's what ended up happening. So when it moves like this, that's called a translation. So it translated, and then you could just specify what you said here. So 3 spaces left and 3 spaces up. Now, we could also write a rule for this, and the rule would go this way. And so x comma y was the original, and then what it goes to is this. Well, since I have to go left, it's going to end up being x minus 3. And since I had to go up, it's going to be y plus 3. And so that would be our rule that we'd end up having. And so again, you can figure that out by just looking at the points. 4, -2, and 1, 1 have nothing in common. It's not like these where one of them just switches signs. So it's definitely not a reflection, not a rotation, because again, the numbers are not the same. So we'll see in a rotation that our values are going to be the same. They'll just kind of switch order, and one might become a negative. And so when we see that, we know right away that it's not those two, and so that's the next one to look for as a translation. We can see what they go from. So here it started at 4. Well, how did they get to 1? Well, they took away 3. See if it works with all of them. From 7 to 4, yeah, they took away 3. See, 4 to 1, yes, they took away 3. So again, I'm just looking at these values right here. They're taking away 3 each time. And so if you see that, check for the other ones and see if it's the case. And then if I look at the other values, from -2 to 1, they had to end up adding 3. See, -2 plus 1, or -2 plus 3 gives me 1. -1 plus 2, well, if I add 3, that's where I get that from. And -7 plus 3, that puts me at -4. So it does end up working out. So let's check out some other problems that we might end up seeing. And here's another case. So 4, 8, down to 3, 6. Let's see what ends up happening here. So let's go ahead and plot some of these points. So 4 spaces over, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then up 8. So that's 7. 8's going to be about right there. So that's going to be A. And then 6, 4. So over 6, up 4 spaces. That's 3, 4 right there. So that's going to be B. And then C is 0, over 0, and then up 2 spaces. That's going to be C. So another triangle. And so let's go ahead and sketch the next one. And the next one looks like 3, 6. So 1, 2, 3, up 6. So it puts me right there, and that's going to be A. Change the color a little bit. So that's A prime. And then B prime is 4.5. So it's 3, 4, 4.5's right there, and then up 3. 1, 2, 3. We'll call that B prime. And then C prime is over 0, and then just up a half a space, or 1.5 spaces. So right there. That's going to be C prime. So notice on this one, it looks like it's getting smaller. It's not the same size. So size changed. So when the size changes, that means that we're dealing with a dilation. That means it's a dilation. And so that's what we're looking for here. So dilation has a scale factor. And so again, I know it's not the others because the numbers aren't the same, just kind of opposite signs, or the numbers aren't switched around. And if you look at the difference, 4 minus 3 is 1. Well, 6 minus 1 is not 4.5, so it's not a translation either. It has to be a dilation. So it has a scale factor, and the scale factor is one in which we have to look at the components. And so I'm going to take a look at this one here. 4 to 3. So from 4 to 3, if I go ahead and do again actually let me go ahead and switch that around. So scale factor is always going to end up being the new over the original. So notice that my figure went from a big figure to a smaller figure. So I should have a fraction as my scale factor. So my new image is 3, my old image was 4. So 3 to 4. And it should work with all the points. So let's just check a few others. See if I do the other one, 6 to 8. I'm taking a look at this value right here, 8 and 6. That reduces down to 3 to 4. Even these decimal ones. See this decimal one, 4.5 to 6. Well, I can reduce this by multiplying it by 10, first of all. Let's get rid of that decimal. And that makes 45 over 60. Well, if I go ahead and take out a common factor, I see 15 goes in each of these numbers. And 15 will reduce down to 3/4, the same number I have here. So all of these values have 3/4 as the scale factor. So we already know what this is. So we know it's a dilation with a scale factor, the scale factor of 3/4. And so that's what it'd be. So the rule would look like this. X comma y is what the original one was. But what it's going to is this. We're taking the 3/4 of the x value, and then I'm going to take 3/4 of the y value. And that's going to be our answer. So let's take a look at the last one here, and we'll go ahead and plot the points real quick. So over 4 spaces, 2, 3, 4, up 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's going to be A. B is over 4 up 2 spaces, and C is over 2 up 1. So there's our figure. And then we go ahead and take a look at the next part, and what happens is we've got negative 5, 4. So let's change color here and go 5 spaces left, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then up 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's going to be A prime. And then over 2 to the left, and then up 4 spaces. Puts me right there, that's B prime. And then over 1 to the left, up 2 spaces, that's C prime. And then I can connect these with lines. And let's see what happens. So notice on this one, the size does not change. Size stays the same. And so I know it's not a dilation. So it's not a dilation. So that means it's either going to end up being a reflection, a rotation, or a transformation. It's not a transformation because that means that the values from C to C would have to be the same as from A to A, so or A prime to A. And so from C to C prime, it's 1, 2, 3 spaces left, 1 space up. But from A to A prime, it's a bunch of spaces over and then 1 space down. So not a translation, not a reflection, because I don't see it reflecting. I don't see the mirror image. So what it is, it's a rotation. A rotation. It's a turn. A turn. And so let's see what it did do. So it started here and it went this way. So it's rotating to the left. So to the left, a turn left is going to end up being counterclockwise. So counterclockwise. And so how much? Well, it looks like when it turned, it only went from one quadrant to the next. It didn't go all the way to the following quadrant. So it didn't do 2 turns. It just did 1 turn left. And so it's rotating here. It only went 1 quadrant. 1 quadrant. So that means it only did a 90-degree turn. And so that's what it ended up doing. It's a 90 degrees counterclockwise. And so let's see what the formula would end up being for this. And so let's take a point. Just take one of them. So we'll take 4, 5. 4 to 5. And let's see what happens to the 4 and 5. What does it go to? Well, it goes to negative 5, 4. That's what the ordered pair up here ends up saying. So let's see what ends up happening. Well, the 4, which was our x value, becomes the y value. So x becomes the y value, y becomes the x value, and it switches signs. So I think that happens with all of them. Let's check. So 4 becomes the y value, and the x value becomes, the y value becomes the x value, it switches signs. Yeah, that's the case. And it's the case here as well. See, the 2 becomes the 2 there, and the 1 becomes this, and switches signs. So that is our rule. So those are the types of problems you're going to end up seeing on tonight's homework, describing the transformation. Good luck.